The grand chamber of the Galactic Council was built to inspire awe. Suspended above the gas giant Orion, its crystal walls shimmered with refracted starlight. Hundreds of delegations filled tiered balconies, their forms a living mosaic of the galaxy's diversity. Yet on this day, there was no sense of unity, only judgment. In the center platform, surrounded by a containment field, stood Dr. Adrian Voss of Earth. Tall, calm, and composed, he scanned the sea of alien eyes. His voice, steady despite the gravity of the moment, carried across the chamber. You are making a mistake, not just against me, but against the principle you claim to uphold. A ripple of whispers moved through the balconies. The presiding speaker, an avian elder whose feathers shimmered like metal, clicked his beak. The evidence is clear. The human envoy is guilty of espionage against member states. Voss met his gaze without flinching. Fabricated evidence, you know it. Your own security records would prove it if you dared look. Gasps came from a few delegations, those who suspected the same but lacked the courage to speak. The trial had been swift, far too swift for any honest deliberation. Charges had been filed and adjudicated within a single rotation of the capital world. The haste reeked of politics. From the human delegation's balcony, Ambassador Helena Miles rose to her feet. The United Earth Assembly formally protests this ruling and demands a review by an independent tribunal. Her words were met with silence, then the rhythmic chime of the gavel. Protest noted, overruled. Voss turned his head slightly toward the human balcony. There was no fear in his eyes, only a strange calm, as if he understood that this moment, terrible as it was, would echo far beyond the chamber. Two council wardens approached, their armor gleaming under the chamber's light. The containment field dissolved, replaced by a different one, a pale blue sphere known as a dissolution field. Its purpose was singular and final. You will carry this stain into your history, Voss said, his voice low but cutting through the quiet. And humanity will remember. Without ceremony, the field activated. In seconds, Dr. Adrian Voss was gone, his form reduced to light, then to nothing at all. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then the presiding speaker intoned, "The matter is concluded. This session is adjourned." Delegates began to file out, some avoiding the human balcony entirely. Others offered brief, uneasy glances, perhaps apologies their governments would never allow them to voice. Ambassador Miles remained still. She didn't look away from where Voss had stood moments before. Her aides whispered for her to leave, but she ignored them. She wanted the image burned into her mind, not as a wound, but as a promise. Later, aboard the human diplomatic shuttle Solace, the crew sat in subdued silence. The stars drifted slowly past the observation windows, but no one admired them. Miles stood at the forward viewport, arms folded. "Send the transmission," she ordered quietly. A young communications officer hesitated. "Are you sure, Ambassador? The message will be interpreted as a declaration." Miles didn't turn. "Good. That's exactly how it should be interpreted." The officer swallowed, then keyed in the transmission code. A brief burst of encrypted data leapt into the void, aimed toward the Sol system. On Earth, the signal would be received within hours. It carried no lengthy explanation, no plea for intervention, only the facts of Voss's trial, the speed of his execution, and the identities of those who had voted for it. In the council chamber orbiting Orion, they believed the matter was closed. They had removed an inconvenient voice and sent humanity a warning, but in the quiet hum of the Solace's engines, another kind of message was forming. It wasn't in words. It was in the slow, deliberate heartbeat of a civilization preparing to act. Miles finally spoke again, her tone almost a whisper. "They think they've silenced us. They've done the opposite." The Solace angled its course toward deep space. Behind it, the shining walls of the Galactic Council's chamber faded into the darkness. Ahead, unseen but inevitable, Earth was already turning its gaze toward the stars. Not in wonder, but in resolve. The signal from the diplomatic shuttle Solace reached Earth's secure communication array just before dawn in Geneva. In the subterranean halls of the United Earth Assembly's command center, red priority lights flashed, pulling officials from their offices and commanders from their sleep. Within minutes, the transmission was decrypted and displayed on the central holotable. A grainy image of Dr. Adrian Voss appeared, captured moments before the dissolution field claimed him. His final words, calm and unwavering, were transcribed alongside the Council's judgment record. Around the table sat representatives of Earth's major nations, fleet admirals, and scientific directors. At the head of the chamber, Chairwoman Alina Serrano rested her hands flat against the table's edge. She was silent for a long moment, letting the weight of what she was seeing sink into everyone present. "Confirmed?" she finally asked. Communications officer nodded. "Triple verified. The trial lasted less than one standard day. No independent review. The vote was carried by 72% of council members present." The room shifted. Some muttered curses under their breath. Others stared at the hologram as if hoping to find some trace of error. Fleet Admiral Keon Rourke, a man who'd spent more years in space than on Earth, leaned forward. "Madam Chair, this is not just a diplomatic slight. This is a calculated message. They executed an unarmed envoy under charges they didn't bother to prove. If they think we'll just absorb this, they're misreading humanity entirely." Serrano's gaze hardened. "Then we will correct their reading," tapped the table, bringing up a different set of files, ones stamped with deep black clearance codes. A chill passed through the room. Everyone recognized the project name glowing above the classified documents, Null Horizon. "Madam Chair," one representative said carefully, "that protocol is not for political leverage. Once set in motion, there's no reversing it without consequences the galaxy won't forget." "That," Serrano replied evenly, "is exactly the point." Null Horizon was more than a military plan. It was a contingency written during humanity's earliest years among the stars. It anticipated a scenario where the Galactic Council moved against Earth in a way that eliminated trust or negotiation. Its goal was not open war. It was targeted, surgical erasure of the Council's ability to function, removing the head of the galactic political body in a single, coordinated strike. Rourke studied her expression. "You're talking about dismantling the Council infrastructure entirely. Every relay, every secure archive, every decision node, and the individuals responsible," Serrano said. "Those who voted for the execution of Dr. Voss will be publicly named, their influence neutralized. This will not be random destruction. It will be precise." A tense quiet followed. It wasn't hesitation. They all understood that lines had been crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. But they also knew what it meant for humanity to declare such an action. "Resources?" asked General Iyad Patel. "Already being mobilized," Rourke said. "Our Titan-class vessels are on standby. They'll move the moment we issue the command." Serrano gave a single nod. "Then we move quickly. The Council believes their distance shields them from consequence. We'll prove otherwise." Across the room, holographic star maps shifted to show Council space, its capital, its fortified stations, and the relay network that linked its vast bureaucratic machinery. Red markers flared across each vital location, highlighting where Earth's strike teams would act. But Serrano's mind was not on maps. She thought of Voss's final words, "And humanity will remember." The meeting dissolved into coordinated chaos. Orders were issued to deep space shipyards. Quantum communication lines carried sealed instructions to Black Ops fleets that normally operated in the uncharted sectors. Civilian space travel advisories were quietly updated to avoid Council-controlled corridors. The first step of Null Horizon had begun, without fanfare, without visible mobilization. From the outside, Earth would appear calm, even silent. Inside, the machinery of retaliation was already spinning at full speed. Serrano lingered after the others filed out. Alone in the chamber, she whispered to the empty air. "They think we're just one voice among hundreds. Soon they'll learn the power of a voice that refuses to be silenced." In orbit, the Titan-class warship Aegis Eternum adjusted its station-keeping. It was a vessel built for deterrence, its hull a fusion of human ingenuity and recovered alien tech. Deep within its armored frame, crews received encrypted orders and began preparing systems not used in decades. The galaxy still moved, unaware that a line had been crossed. The Council still debated other matters, confident in its authority. But far from their capital, Earth was sharpening a blade they could neither see nor stop, one forged not from revenge alone, but from the absolute refusal to be underestimated again. The Galactic Council's capital world of Virelian Prime rotated lazily beneath the glow of its twin suns. From its orbital viewports, the city looked serene. Shining towers, wide sky lanes, and a constant flow of diplomatic shuttles. Inside the council chamber, however, that calm was starting to fracture. The first signs had come quietly. A long-range relay station in the Dreven corridor went offline without explanation. Minutes later, another relay on the opposite side of council space reported critical power fluctuations. Normally, such incidents were rare but manageable. Equipment could fail, after all. But within hours, a dozen more stations registered anomalies. Counselor Ren Vasari, an elder of the Andrin species and chair of the Communications Committee, tapped the surface of his desk impatiently. "Our redundancy protocols exist for precisely this reason. Yet my technicians tell me these malfunctions are not the result of random failures. They're coordinated." A junior aide glanced nervously at the chamber floor. "Coordinated? How, Counselor?" Vasari's frilled crest twitched. "Identical data corruption patterns. Systems wiped clean, but with precision. No collateral damage, no civilian channels touched. Whoever is doing this knows our network inside and out." From across the chamber, Counselor Torvin Miro of the Zelath leaned back, arms folded. "You're implying sabotage." "From whom?" Vasari hesitated. The question was obvious, but saying it aloud was dangerous. "I have no evidence to assign blame." Yet. Still, several members exchanged glances. A name hung unspoken in the air: Earth. The execution of their envoy had been noted by every political body in the galaxy. Some thought it a necessary assertion of council authority. Others considered it reckless. But no one doubted humans had the capacity to respond. In a private meeting room adjacent to the chamber, Miro keyed in his personal comm code, opening a secure link to the Council's intelligence division. The image of Director Caress flickered into existence, her features partially obscured by encryption blur. "What are you not telling the Council?" Miro asked directly. Caress's voice was low. 3 of the affected relay stations were outfitted with human-manufactured quantum nodes. Not current models, older ones from their early trade years. Somehow those nodes received activation signals embedded in normal traffic and rewrote our access controls. Miro frowned. "That's impossible. Those nodes were decommissioned decades ago." "Apparently not," Caress said. "And the signature is clean. Too clean. We can't even trace the origin point. Whoever's behind this is bypassing our standard detection lattice entirely." Back in Earth's deep orbit command facility hidden beyond Neptune's shadow, Fleet Admiral Rourke received an update from his operations chief. "Phase 1 disruption successful, sir. The Council's relay mesh is folding exactly as projected. They can still talk internally, but their reach beyond core sectors is degrading fast. Rourke studied the real-time display, a map of council space, with red fractures spreading like cracks in glass. And civilian traffic? Untouched. Our disruption algorithms target only government-encoded traffic layers. Good. Keep it that way. The point isn't to harm the galaxy, it's to show the Council that their command structure is not untouchable. Chairwoman Serrano's voice came over the secure link. Admiral, proceed to Phase 2. I want their archives. Next, the ones they pretend are secure. Understood, Rourke replied. Back on Varelian Prime, panic was mounting in quiet corners. Archive clerks reported locked data vaults suddenly opening to encrypted transfer requests they didn't recognize. When they tried to cancel the transfers, the system simply replied, "Access already approved by primary authority." But no such approval had been logged. Councillor Vasari's own staff brought him troubling news. Certain classified documents, particularly those related to past disciplinary actions against Earth, were no longer in the Council's possession. They hadn't just been copied, they were gone. The Council leadership convened in an emergency closed session. No recorders, no public feed, only the highest-ranking members and their aides. "This is not random piracy," Vasari declared. "We are being dismantled piece by piece. Whoever is behind this is precise, patient, and entirely confident in their ability to act without interference." Councillor Miro finally spoke the name aloud. "Earth," a hush followed. "They wouldn't dare," one delegate began, but stopped when Vasari's crest twitched again. "Wouldn't they? We executed their envoy without due process. Did you think their species would beg for reinstatement? No. If this is them, they're already inside our systems, and they've been there longer than we realize." No one noticed the encrypted signal passing quietly through the Council chamber's own comm relays. Far away, aboard the Aegis Eternum, human cyber teams watched the Council's secure meeting unfold in real time. Rourke allowed himself a small, grim smile. "They're starting to feel it," he said, and this was only the beginning. The Galactic Council rarely moved quickly on anything, but this time was different. Within hours of the emergency session, orders were dispatched to the core defense network. The Council's encrypted military channels lit up with directives. Isolate suspected infiltration points, shut down vulnerable relays, and prepare counter-intrusion sweeps. In the cavernous operations hall of the Defense Directorate, rows of technicians worked in synchronized urgency. Status boards flickered as entire sectors went into lockdown. "Seal the Dreven corridor. Restrict all transit to Council-authorized vessels," barked Commander Keldor, his voice sharp with authority. "If the humans are moving assets through our borders, I want every entry point monitored." A communications officer turned from her station, crest feathers shifting uneasily. "Sir, the orders to seal the Dreven corridor were already executed." Keldor blinked. "Already executed? By whom?" She hesitated. "By you, sir. At least, according to the system log." The commander strode over to her console and stared at the records. His own authorization codes stared back at him, complete with timestamp and biometric verification. The problem was, at the recorded time, Keldor had been in a secure meeting across the city. "They're inside our command systems," he muttered. Far. Across the void, aboard the Aegis Eternum, human cyber officers monitored the reaction. Lines of code scrolled across their displays as they intercepted the Council's countermeasures. "They've initiated trace sweeps on the Dreven and Marix sectors," reported Lieutenant Halverson. "Shall we let them think they're narrowing in on us?" Fleet Admiral Rourke considered for a moment. "Yes, give them breadcrumbs, but make them chase in circles. Every hour they waste strengthens our position." In the Council's intelligence wing, Director Caress authorized the deployment of Sentinel protocols, high-level AI constructs designed to root out digital intruders. The constructs swept through system after system, but each time they closed in on a suspicious data pattern, it dissolved into harmless noise. Worse, Some of the Sentinel instances began to behave strangely, routing themselves into inactive storage, bays, locking themselves behind firewall layers that even Caress's own override codes couldn't breach. It was as if someone was turning the Council's own defenses into sealed vaults, one after another. Counselor Vasari was briefed on the situation late into the night cycle. He listened in silence as the chief technician explained how certain encrypted vaults, ones containing sensitive legal records, had effectively vanished from the accessible network. "And if we cannot retrieve them?" Vasari asked. "They will remain inaccessible, sir, possibly indefinitely." Vasari's eyes narrowed. "Not inaccessible, just moved." Meanwhile, in the outer reaches of human-controlled space, civilian life remained undisturbed. Commercial shipping lanes operated normally. Colonies went about their daily routines, and no public announcements were made. The entire campaign remained invisible to anyone outside the inner circles of Earth's leadership. Chairwoman Serrano appeared on Rourke's secure holo channel. "They've begun their counterstrike as expected. I trust you have the next step ready?" "Yes, ma'am," Rourke replied. "Phase 3 involves physical positioning. Our fleets are already moving to predetermined coordinates. No aggression, just presence. When they notice, the psychological effect will amplify the pressure." "And their response?" Serrano asked. "They'll see it as intimidation, which it is, but they won't be able to call it an act of war without admitting we're inside their systems. That's the trap." Back on Varelian Prime, the council chamber reconvened under growing unease. The public still knew nothing, but whispers had begun to spread among mid-level administrators. Councillor Miro addressed the assembly. "If this continues, our credibility as the galaxy's unifying authority will fracture. Some member worlds may reconsider their allegiance." Vasari agreed, reluctantly. "The longer we remain unable to confirm the scope of the breach, the more we invite doubt. And if Earth is responsible, we must face the possibility that they have been preparing for this since before their envoy ever set foot here." An aide rushed into the chamber, whispering urgently into Vasari's ear. His expression darkened. "What is it?" Miro demanded. "A fleet," Vasari said slowly. "Human registry. Dozens of capital-class vessels. They've just emerged from FTL in the neutral zone bordering our core sectors." The chamber erupted in alarmed voices. "Are they declaring war?" one delegate cried. Vasari's gaze was fixed on the live feed now being projected in the center of the chamber. The image showed an imposing wall of human warships, their hulls, gleaming under the light of a distant star, arrayed in perfect formation. "No," Vasari murmured. "They're waiting." In the Aegis Eternum's command deck, Rourke watched the same formation from his vantage point. His voice was steady, almost calm. "Let them decide what happens next." The image of the human fleet lingered in the minds of every council delegate long after the emergency session adjourned. In private chambers and shadowed corridors, hushed voices debated the implications. For many, it was the first time in decades they had seen a foreign power display such scale so close to the Council's core territory, and do so without firing a single shot. On the world of Cothran Prime, High Chancellor Arvex reviewed the footage for the third time. His advisors urged caution, warning that aligning with Earth could provoke sanctions or worse from the Council. But Arvex saw something else in those ships, not just power, but discipline. "They are not here to destroy us," Arvex said to his inner circle. "They are here to remind us that the Council does not speak for all of us." 2 sectors away, on the aquatic world of Saravan, Minister Rilan received a coded transmission routed through a chain of untraceable relays. The message was brief. "If you wish to speak freely, we will listen. Secure channel follows." There was no signature, but the encryption markers were unmistakably human. Rilan hesitated. As a mid-tier member state, Saravan's influence in council policy was limited. Yet in recent years, Frustration with the council's bureaucracy had grown, especially with the economic tariffs that favored core worlds. The execution of Earth's envoy had shaken many, and Rilan felt the ripples in every conversation with her peers. She opened the secure channel. In a quiet, unassuming office aboard the Aegis Eternum, Commander Halverson handled the connection. "Minister Rilan," he greeted, his voice steady. "You are not the first to reach out." "What is it you want from us?" Rilan asked cautiously. "Not subjugation, not tribute," Halverson said. "We want you to consider whether the Council's decisions truly represent your world's interests. If not, perhaps it is time to discuss an alternative." Rilan leaned back, the water-like light patterns of her office reflecting across her face. "Alternatives are dangerous things." "They are," Halverson agreed. "But so is silence." Meanwhile, within the Council's Central Intelligence Division, Director Caress received a disturbing report. Minor network outages were beginning to occur on worlds that had recently voiced quiet dissent. Communications logs suggested these were not technical failures, but deliberate disruptions, targeted, precise, and meant to remind those worlds of their dependence on Council infrastructure. Caress brought the matter to Councillor Vasari, who listened with a deepening frown. "Who authorized these measures?" Vasari asked. Caress hesitated. "Officially? No one. The directives came through approved channels, but the authorization tags are inconsistent. In some cases, they mimic my own." Vasari's thoughts were grim. If Earth's digital reach extended this far, they were not only undermining the Council's military readiness, they were quietly eroding its political foundation. In the outer fleet formation, Admiral Rourke received updated intel from his operatives. 5 member states have initiated indirect contact, Halverson reported. 3 more have begun open debates in their legislative bodies questioning the envoy's execution. The cracks are widening. Rourke nodded. "We don't need to convince them all. We just need enough to tilt the balance. Once the Council is divided, it cannot act decisively." Chairwoman Serrano's secure transmission arrived moments later. The objective remains the same: pressure without overt engagement. But be prepared. If they misinterpret our restraint as weakness, they may try something reckless. "I'll be ready," Rourke assured her. In the grand city of Velas Tor, capital of the world Kiris, Councillor Miro met discreetly with 2 fellow delegates in a small dining hall far from the main political district. The 3 spoke quietly over their meal, careful to avoid direct accusations, but circling the subject nonetheless. "If the Council's decisions endanger our people, we have a duty to protect them," one delegate murmured. "And if that means working with outsiders?" Miro asked. The other delegate met his gaze evenly. "If that means survival?" Back on Varelian Prime, the Council convened yet another emergency meeting to discuss the fleet's continued presence. The debate was fractious, with accusations of weakness, overreach, and paranoia flying in every direction. In the midst of the argument, a sudden alert flashed across the central display. Unidentified transmission detected. Origin. Multiple Council. Worlds. Content. Joint petition for an independent inquiry into the envoy's execution. Gasps and mutters filled the chamber. A petition of this nature had not been seen in generations, and it carried signatures from worlds both core and fringe. Counselor. Vasari knew what this meant. The Council's unity had been broken. Somewhere in the vast black beyond Varelian Prime, aboard the Aegis Eternum, Admiral Rourke received confirmation of the petition. His expression was unreadable, but his words carried quiet weight. "They've taken the first step for us." The Galactic Council had endured internal disagreements before, but never had dissent been so public, so coordinated. The petition circulating among member worlds was more than a political statement. It was a fracture line threatening to split the institution in half. In the high chamber, Council Chair Orvin slammed his gavel down, demanding silence. This council cannot and will not allow disorder to undermine our authority. If the petitioners believe they can bypass established order, we will remind them of the cost. Military representatives were summoned. Fleet Marshal Drevos, a veteran of 3 interstellar conflicts, stood tall before the council. With your authorization, I will assemble a task force to reassert council presence in the contested sectors. This will be a demonstration, no combat unless provoked. But our ships will fly in formation across every dissenting system. Councillor Vasari listened, his unease growing. A demonstration of force, even a non-combat one, could easily escalate. Yet he could see the majority leaning toward approval. The council wanted a show of strength. They feared the alternative, being seen as powerless before Earth's fleet. The vote passed. Drevos's task force, 3 heavy carriers, a dozen cruisers and support craft, was ordered to mobilize. Their destination, the Saravian sector, one of the first worlds to openly question the Envoy's execution. Far from the council chamber aboard the Aegis Eternum, Admiral Rourke studied the same intelligence feed. "They're moving sooner than I expected," he remarked. "Halverson, inform our forward observation units. I want constant tracking on Drevos's fleet." Halverson tapped through encrypted channels. "What's the response plan?" Rourke's gaze hardened. "We don't intercept them. Not yet. We let them see exactly what they expect, empty space, until the moment they realize they're not alone." In the capital city of Saravan, Minister Rilan received word of the incoming task force. Her aides whispered panicked questions. Should they send assurances to the council? Publicly distance themselves from Earth? But Rilan remembered her conversation with Halverson. She sent a single message to her staff. No public statements. Maintain course. Within days, Drevos's fleet arrived in the Saravan system. The carriers cut a striking silhouette against the blue-white star, broadcasting council insignia across all frequencies. Their presence alone was meant to intimidate. At first, it seemed the strategy would work. Saravan's space lanes quieted, merchant traffic shifted away, and public broadcasts carried the council's narrative of stabilization. Drevos allowed himself a quiet sense of satisfaction until the 6th day. A faint ping appeared on the fleet's long-range scanners. Unidentified contacts. At first, the readings were sporadic, almost ghost-like, small spikes in distortion that came and went. Drevos ordered tighter sweeps. That was when the Aegis Eternum decloaked at the system's edge. It was not alone. One by one, more human vessels emerged from the void, each larger than the last. Escorts, destroyers, battleships, and then the Vanguard Titan, a warship so massive it blotted out stars behind it. Their hulls gleamed with a metallic finish, unlike any council design, their weapon mounts idle but unmistakable. No targeting locks were initiated. No comms channels were opened. The human fleet simply sat in silent formation, occupying the high orbital lanes above Saravan. On the bridge of Drevos's flagship, silence reigned. His officers exchanged uneasy glances. They had expected scattered resistance at most. Certainly not a fleet of this magnitude. Drevos opened a channel to the Council's central command. "We have a complication." Chair Orvin's voice came sharp through the comm. "Describe." "They are here," Drevos said, eyes fixed on the colossal human flagship. "And they are waiting." Back aboard the Aegis Eternum, Rourke spoke quietly to his crew. "Hold position. Let them make the first move." In the council chamber, the news spread like a shockwave. Some delegates argued for immediate withdrawal to avoid escalation. Others insisted on advancing, unwilling to yield ground. But as they Debated, a live feed from Drevos's fleet was broadcast. The image of humanity's Titan-class warship, serene and immovable, surrounded by a silent armada. The optics were devastating. It was no longer the Council's fleet imposing authority. It was the human fleet allowing them to remain in the system. On Saravan, public opinion turned sharply. Citizens filled the streets in quiet demonstrations, not against Earth, but against the Council's show of force. The message was clear. They no longer saw the Council as their sole protector. In private, Vasari drafted a note to Rourke. It was short, and he would not send it through official channels. I am ready to talk. The image of the human Titan-class warship above Saravan became more than just a military display. It became a symbol. Within days, it was broadcast across hundreds of star systems. Citizens in Council-aligned worlds saw something they had never seen before. A power equal to, or perhaps greater than, the Galactic Council, and one that had not fired a single shot. On the Council floor, debates turned to shouting matches. Delegates from worlds with strong economic ties to Earth argued for compromise, while hardliners demanded immediate military escalation. The chamber had never been more divided. Council Chair Orvin struggled to keep order. We cannot appear weak before a species that defies our authority. If we yield now, every world will follow Saravan's path. Vasari rose slowly from his seat. With respect, Chair, this is no longer about appearing weak. It is about survival. Drevos's fleet is already outmatched. If we push them to engage, we risk total destruction, and that would end the Council entirely. Orvin's expression darkened. Then what do you suggest? That we let Earth dictate the terms of our own governance? No, Vasari replied. I suggest we speak to them directly before we lose the chance. Elsewhere, in the shadowed corners of the Council's central city, quiet meetings were taking place without Orvin's knowledge. Representatives from 8-member worlds gathered in a private chamber, their comms masked by dampening fields. Minister Rylan of Saravan sat at the table, her voice steady. Humanity has shown us two things, she said. First, they can reach any system they choose. Second, they have no need to destroy unless provoked. That makes them a far better negotiating partner than the current Council leadership, which would rather use threats than solutions. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably, aware they were discussing treason under the Council's laws. But the logic was difficult to dispute. One by one, they agreed to send informal envoys, not through official channels, but directly to Admiral Rourke's fleet. On the Aegis Eternum, Halverson received the first encrypted signal. Admiral, it's from multiple Council worlds, some of them longtime loyalists. They want a private audience. Rourke leaned over the console. Set it up. But make it clear. Earth isn't here to replace the Council. We're here to make sure it never repeats what it did to our envoy. The meeting took place in the neutral space of a Saravian diplomatic shuttle. Rourke entered, flanked by 2 officers, his expression calm but unyielding. The delegates, dressed in the formal attire of their worlds, rose to greet him. Vasari, having arrived in secret, was the first to speak. Admiral Rourke, we are here because we believe the Council's current leadership has made a grave error, one that has endangered us all. But if we are to change its course, we need your cooperation. Rourke studied their faces. And what exactly are you proposing? A vote of no confidence, Rylan said. It would remove Orvin and his inner circle. But for it to pass, we need stability in the aftermath. We need to assure the galaxy that there will be no war. Rourke considered it. You're asking me to keep my fleet idle while you stage a political coup. We're asking you to prevent the Council from escalating this into something far worse, Vasari corrected. After a long silence, Rourke nodded. I'll hold position. But if any fleet makes a move toward Earth or its allies, I won't wait for your vote to be counted. Back in the council chamber, Orvin sensed something shifting. Delegates who had once been firmly in his camp were avoiding his gaze, their speeches growing vague and non-committal. Reports came in from Drevos. The human fleet was still in position, but more ships had arrived, extending their perimeter in a show of quiet dominance. Civil unrest was spreading on several member worlds. When Orvin finally confronted Vasari in private, his tone was sharp. "You've been speaking to them, haven't you?" Vasari didn't deny it. "The galaxy is speaking to them, Orvin, and you can't stop it." The next day, the motion was filed. The vote of no confidence would take place in 72 hours. For the first time in decades, the Galactic Council's leadership faced a real possibility of being overthrown. Not by war, but by the same rules it had written for others. And above Sarivan, the human Titan-class warship waited, silent as a shadow, a reminder to every delegate that time was running out. The council chamber had never been this quiet. Not during the trade collapse, not during the Rim Wars, not even when entire worlds had broken away in the past. The only sound now was the gentle hum of the gravity stabilizers as delegates took their seats for the most decisive vote in living memory. Council Chair Orvin sat rigid at the central dais, his hands gripping the carved armrests. His aides whispered last-minute instructions, urging him to hold strong, yet even he could feel it. An undercurrent in the room, a shift in the air. Too many familiar allies refused to meet his eyes. Above the planet, the human Titan-class warship still lingered in perfect geostationary orbit, its hull reflecting the system's pale sunlight. Every council delegate knew the eyes of billions were watching, not only on their homeworlds, but across the galactic networks. Minister Rilan of Saravan rose first. "Before this vote begins, let it be stated for the record, this action is not undertaken in malice toward the council itself, but to ensure its survival. Leadership that ignores diplomacy and chooses irreversible acts over reason is unfit to guide us." A murmur swept the chamber. Orvin's voice was sharp. "Survival? You invite destruction. These humans understand only strength. Remove me, and you invite chaos into every corridor of this galaxy." Vasari stood slowly, his words measured. "Chair Orvin, perhaps it is time to recognize that strength takes many forms. Earth has shown one kind, the kind we cannot match, but they have also shown restraint. We must meet that restraint with wisdom, not defiance." The presiding clerk activated the voting system. Colored lights embedded in each delegate's desk glowed softly, awaiting their decision. One by one, votes began to register on the central display. Green for removal, red for retention. Orvin watched in disbelief as the first dozen lights flashed. Green. The trend did not slow. His voice rose, tinged with desperation. "Do you truly believe they will stop with me? Do you think humanity will be content until they have torn this chamber down stone by stone?" The final votes came in. The board displayed the result in towering letters above the chamber floor. Removal of Chair Orvin and senior council leadership. Approved. Gasps and murmurs filled the air. Orvin stood, his expression unreadable. For a moment, it seemed he might refuse to leave, but protocol demanded compliance. With slow, deliberate steps, he walked out, flanked by council guards. In orbit, Admiral Rourke received the secure transmission within minutes. Halvorsen turned to him. "It's done. Orvin's out. Interim leadership has been appointed, and they've requested a direct meeting." "Bring them aboard," Rourke said. The meeting took place in the Aegis Eternum's Grand Conference Deck, a space designed as much for psychological impact as for comfort. Vast, transparent walls revealed the stars beyond, dwarfing the figures seated at the table. Minister Rilan spoke first. "Admiral, the Council will issue a formal statement condemning the execution of your envoy. We will commit to new protocols to prevent any such act from happening again." We also wish to open trade and defense discussions on equal terms. Rourke listened without interrupting. When they had finished, he spoke. Earth didn't come here to take your council apart. You did that yourselves. We came to make sure what happened to our envoy would never happen again, to anyone. We don't rule by fear, and we have no interest in ruling you at all. But if you threaten humanity again, there will be no second conversation. The room was silent. The delegates nodded, not because they feared immediate destruction, but because they understood the unspoken truth. Earth had already proven its point without firing a single weapon. Weeks later, the galaxy's political landscape looked different. The restructured council began cautious but genuine talks with Earth. Trade routes reopened, security pacts were drafted. And everywhere, people remembered that moment when a single human warship had held an entire galaxy's breath. On Earth, the image of the Aegis Eternum above Saravan became an emblem, printed on banners, displayed in museums, taught in classrooms. It wasn't a symbol of conquest, but of resolve. For Admiral Rourke, it was just another mission completed. But as he stood on the observation deck watching the stars slide past, he knew the message had traveled farther than any fleet could reach. Humanity would speak softly when it could, but if pushed, if wronged, it would answer in a language the galaxy would never forget.